Thank you so much to all of you for turning in significant numbers on a Wednesday evening when, we certainly do have mind tomorrow's holiday and how to enjoy that. Thank you so much. So, without much ado, we will begin the contours of BIS framework. That's the topic for today. So far as BIS is concerned, the name, it suggests Bureau of Indian Standards. Bureau of Indian Standards is an administrative body which takes care of the quality of goods and services which are there in the Indian context, and it is an administrative body under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Government of India. So far as today's topic is concerned, we will spend 1 hour together today on these contents. Number one, introduction to BIS. What is BIS all about? Second, what is the significance of BIS? Why all of us have gathered here as indirect tax professionals and lawyers in order to understand what is therefore is the significance. Thereafter, there are certain certification schemes, certain registration scheme. What is FMCS? What is the parallel in the Indian context? We will discuss that. Compulsory registration scheme, to which products this scheme is applicable, how to apply, and the related nuance. We will deep dive into that. What have been the recent developments, the statements from various ministries, so on and so forth, and why this area has become so relevant today. Thereafter, while implementing BIS, what are the business challenges that various sectors and industry is facing today? We will have a peek on that and what could be the possible solutions. Thereafter, in the end, we will summate, all of that we would have discussed. And of course, before we end, we will have a short Q&A session as well, wherein any remark, any doubt that you may have, my partner Vishal and I, we will try and clarify to the best of our abilities and belief. Yeah. So with this, we dive into today's discussion. So first of all, let's understand what is BIS. So clearly, BIS, which is Bureau of Indian Standards, it is India's statutory national standard body, which prescribes the qualitative standards for covering goods and services under the standardized regime. So clearly, we have a very competitive canvas at a global level today. So one has to ensure that, whether if something is leaving the country, it must meet the best of standards. Likewise, the Indian government today is very, very cognizant of the fact that India is a very special market today. So therefore, whatever is being served in the form of goods or otherwise to the Indian consumers, that must be of the highest quality. And that's the very purpose, qualitative standards are being formulated by BIS. Now, so far as BIS is concerned, it helps in providing safe and reliable quality goods, minimizing health hazards to consumer, protecting the environment, promoting exports and substituting imports, controlling proliferation of variety. So the idea overall is public good and health. So anything which lands onto the Indian soil, whether it is manufactured within India or it is being imported outside the country, it must be of the highest quality, is what this BIS authority is trying to ensure. Yeah. The primary objective, of course, is to formulate and prescribe the standards. We did discuss this. Now, within these standards, depending upon the sector or industry we are talking about, there are certification schemes, there are registration schemes, what these schemes are, what are the pros and cons, how to apply for them, what needs to be done, and what are the critical pointers that one has to take care of as industry so that my supply chain is not disrupted. We will do a deep dive into. BIS carries out various activities. As I said, there are certain certification scheme, hallmarking, so on and so forth for gold and silver jewelry. So that also we may touch upon, briefly, while there are some other schemes where we will do a deep dive. So this is what BIS is. Initially, you had a BIS Act 1986, and recently, 6 years back, the whole act has been revamped and renamed as BIS Act 2016. The idea, therefore, is that the standards today should be at par with the best of the best in the global scenario. So that was the overall scheming while revamping this particular act. Now let's understand the significance of BIS, why all of us have gathered here today. BIS is essentially an instrument which the government of India is using for its Make in India initiative, in order to promote its Make in India initiative. How is that happening? We understand from a trade perspective that there are tariff barriers wherein you levy duties such as safeguard, anti-dumping, so on and so forth, which are levied in terms of Section 9, 9 capital A, 9B of the Custom Tariff Act. Those are tariff barriers whereby applying a larger amount of duty, you discourage that certain importation should not happen from countries outside. Rather, we should give an impetus to the domestic manufacturer, and therefore, in the form of penalty, these tariff barriers are put on certain products or categories. Likewise, there are certain non-tariff barriers as well. When you see that an FMCS process is so comprehensive and so complex that in order to get that certification, the manufacturer sitting outside the country may take anywhere 4 months to a 7 months time in order to get his factory certified. These are some of the things which do directly or indirectly act as trade barriers. This makes you think that, if the certification does not come, or if it takes a longer period of time, it may, very well disrupt the supply chain. It may, affect the import raw material that I have to get into the country. So these are some of the ways and means in which it is being used as an instrument of non-tariff barrier. And thus, a larger impetus directly, indirectly is being given on the Make in India initiative by the government of India. And I did touch upon the point of, supply chain disruption as well. So, if my exporter outside the country is not aware that, a BIS standard is applicable under the FMCS scheme, or I do not know, it may so happen, and it has been happening, for a while now, that custom authorities are also up with the knowledge of BIS, and they would, stop the consignment from, clearance. Once you file a bill of entry, they would, along with all other documents, they would also need a BIS certification issued to the exporter outside the country. If I'm afraid you do not have that certificate, or if the other party has not, gone through the process of cumbersome process, rather I should say, of FMCS, then you are gone. The business may take a hit. It means that anywhere between 4 to 7 months it may take for the certification to happen, and thereafter the clearance to happen. And it may really, hit the supply chain, in many ways you can imagine. So clearly, owing to these critical aspects, the Indian leadership in last 6, 7, 8 years, they have emphasized on why there should be a high quality products which should land onto the Indian soil. As recent as on January 20, that is 4 days back, a detailed press release was issued by the Ministry of Commerce, in which Mr. Piyush Goyal very categorically has said, while addressing, footwear industry, that, the time have gone where India could have lived with the low quality material. Now, in today's India, you have to have the high quality product landing onto the Indian soil, and consumers must get best of the best. So that, if anything, that indicates, it shows government's intent that they only want high quality products to land onto the Indian soil, and therefore wanted consumers to enjoy that when they are shelling out the money as well. So clearly, these three statements as well by the Honorable Prime Minister, he has been time and again re-emphasizing that zero defect, zero effect policy has to be given effect to in the Indian context. One. Second, Piyush Goyal Saab, not only in this January, couple of years back as well, while addressing a standard conference in Delhi, had expressed similar sentiments. And also, our Honorable Finance Minister on the floor of the House while giving the budget 2022 address, she also did talk about the mandatory standardization and the quality products which must land onto the Indian soil. So therefore, from a significance perspective, any professional who's dealing with indirect tax, any professional who's dealing with customs, any professional, who's an in-house counsel, for an industry, or anybody playing a role in EXIM, they must know the standards in detail, what BIS framework is all about, what are the standards applicable on their sector. Only once you know these laws, these standards, only then you can ensure that, suitable application of that is happening in the context of your business. Yeah. So this was the basic introduction, we wanted to give. I now hand over the dais to my partner and dear friend, Vishal Gupta ji. He will now take us through the FMCS scheme, and also, may shed light on some of the points that I have touched upon. Vishal, over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Rajat. So basically, as Rajat rightly introduced, that BIS is all about quality certification, and, it's sort of a non-trade barrier, we are talking about. So, the first discussion which we are going to have is on the foreign manufacturer certification scheme. So as the name suggests, this applies to the products which are being manufactured outside India and they are being brought into India through export, from outside the country, right? Or import, within the country. So, before getting into the, I would say, technicalities of what is the process of FMCA, what is the meaning of FMCS and all that, one very interesting fact, I would like to, share with the audience here that, when we say the foreign manufacturers, so let's not be mistaken, the foreign manufacturer means anybody who is manufacturing outside India. So we have seen cases, where there are, state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities sitting somewhere in Europe, and they have all the, quality certifications from the world-renowned organizations, which are, based on their local requirements within their country of, origin. But still, the BIS is very, very clear that even if anybody or any company or any manufacturer has best of the certifications in place, based on, let us say, just laws prevalent in United States of India or European countries or anywhere else, but you have to comply with the BIS standards as well. So they have, published standards against, each product segment, which they are notifying, time and again, whenever they come up with a order, the order is supported by a standard, and those standards are supposed to be complied with in spirit, in letter as well as spirit, So when I say the compliance is with respect to, the manufacturing, the standard of manufacturing facilities, the compliance is with respect to, the testing facilities within the manufacturing facility, the compliances with respect to, the overall capability of manufacturing facility to produce a quality good. And of course, those quality parameters have been defined, in each and every standard. So, with this background, we'll probably do a bit of deep dive that what is foreign manufacturer certification scheme is all about. So this scheme, as I said, it's applicable to any manufacturer who is, manufacturing goods outside India. And so the way it works is that, whosoever is importing goods into India, they are supposed to ensure that the goods before they enter India or before they are, they arrive at the custom port in India, there is a BIS certification which is already there for the manufacturing facility per se. So, there are various scenarios where, the manufacturer is, let us say, somebody else, and the goods are exported in sitting in, somebody sitting in Vietnam, and they are sending it to India. So the way it works is, we have I would say faced multiple scenarios where the manufacturer is somebody different, the exporter is somebody different, and some Indian importer is importing the goods into India. So they generally come back with a question that, okay, who should I approach for this sort of a certification? So the way, the law is kind of, written, and the way the rules are that they have to coordinate within themselves. I mean, let us say the Indian importer as well as the foreign export house, but eventually the certification has to be of the manufacturing facility and the product. So let's not, the one very important point is that the certification happens at the product level. So the particular standard or a particular order is applicable to a product. There may be a number of products within the same standard, but again, there are various detailed rules and guidelines, prescribed against them as well, that each product needs to be certified, but the classification of product in the same under the same group is also possible. But in this session, I will not get into those technicalities. So coming back to the process, so it's applicable to all the foreign manufacturers sitting outside India. The manufacturer has to comply with the testing equipment formalities. There has to be a adequate complete manufacturing facility within there, and then after the detailed process which we will just go through, they are given the license. And once they are given the license, they are then issued a certificate. So practically the way it works is then whenever a consignment is landing into India, it is accompanied by a certificate. So the custom officers, as Rajat also rightly pointed out, they check whether the manufacturer has the relevant certificate or not, and then only the consignment is cleared. So the process from an FMCS perspective, we'll just probably get in, discuss some of the important aspect of the FMCS process. I will also talk about after this that what is the difference between the FMCS process vis-a-vis the process which is applicable to an Indian manufacturer. But first, let us see what are the key steps. So we have divided this into 10 key steps. So it's like that like any other certification process, one has to file an application form, give all the necessary supporting documents with respect to the KYC detail, the factory layouts, list of machinery equipment, list of test equipment, what kind of quality policies are there within the company, what kind of quality orders are there within the company. So that's an application which is supported by the relevant documents. One very key important point here is that that as per regulations, any foreign company who is approaching the BIS authorities for this certification has to appoint a authorized Indian representative. Now, what is the purpose of this representative? The way the authorities believe that a company who is a foreign resident and and a manufacturing facility outside India, so they are a foreign national. So they need somebody in India who is representing them, who is ready to take the responsibility for the overall compliance. Because at the end of the day, the entire process leads to a compliance as well as certain reps and warranties. So somebody who is an Indian resident needs to take an onus. So the way it works is that that foreign company does a contract with this individual, and then he becomes an authorized Indian representative. But important point here is that this person has to be carefully selected, because this person has personal responsibilities as well. So tomorrow, unfortunately, if there are any non-compliances leading to non-compliance with BIS regulations, this person is personally and financially responsible as well. So of course, the companies do a back-to-back arrangement, back-to-back indemnification, in their agreements with these people. But of course, the relevant important part here is that this person has to undertake a lot of responsibility, right? And then, apart from, as I said, in this application, you have to give a complete list of test equipment, in-house testing facilities, etc., etc. So those all details are given. So practically how it works is, once you give an application, BIS official is assigned, they go through the application. And of course, there are a lot of to and fro of questions. They ask their queries, and, either the company themselves or their representative, or AIR or any other, representative, they give responses. And eventually, once the relevant BIS official is satisfied that all the paperwork is in place, they give a first stage approval, which is an application level approval. Once that application level approval is given, then they appoint a BIS scientist who has the relevant technical knowledge and background to sort of review and visit the manufacturing premises of such industry or such sector. So they have panel of scientists and who are there on their panel. So they allocate the responsibility to a relevant scientist. Once a scientist is allocated, they then a travel plan is formed. The scientist visits the manufacturing facility outside India. So there are basically two purposes of that visit. One, it is sort of an inspection. They see that what kind of manufacturing facility you are maintaining, what kind of policies and procedures are in place, what kind of quality control is in place, and what kind of equipment, including test equipments, are in place. Because once we talk about quality, the quality the quality assurance begins at home. So if the manufacturing facility doesn't have those facilities available within the facility, probably there will be an issue. So that is how they prescribe those facility. And most importantly, the BIS standards are defined in such detail that the standards talks about each quality parameter which is linked to a testing parameter, and testing parameters are also linked with testing equipments also. So we have seen standards which are actually defined in such a detail where even they have prescribed the testing equipments as well, that sort of stat testing equipment you should have in place. So scientist goes and visit the facility, see everything from that perspective, and once they are satisfied, they actually pick up a sample for testing. So generally what they do is they pick up a couple of samples. One sample they ask the manufacturer to sort of test in front of them in their facility itself. One sample is sent to a BIS approved lab in India. So once the scientist is satisfied, the testing procedure there in the lab is satisfactory, the sample is sent to India for further testing. One very key point again here is, as I said, that there are a lot of manufacturers sitting outside India who have all the world level facilities or state of the art facilities and processes in place. So one may say that, okay, let us say in a country in Europe, there might be very good testing facilities which are available. So why the sample needs to be sent to India? But the BIS regulations are very, very clear. They say that the final sample should be tested in a BIS approved lab only. And as we speak today, the BIS approved labs are available only in India. So it's not that a BIS approved lab will be available in Europe or US or Thailand or Vietnam or somewhere else. So no, they are available in India only. So that once the sample is sent, that of course there is a time which is taken for sample testing, etc. So after the sample testing by BIS approved lab, a test report is sent to the concerned BIS official. Once the satisfactory report comes, then they give a I would say go ahead to the manufacturer, and then of course there are a couple of documentation formalities which happen, which includes an indemnity agreement as well as a tripartite agreement. So another important document which has to be submitted at that stage is that the foreign manufacturer has to submit a $10,000 bank guarantee for each license. So they have to give a $10,000 bank guarantee as well. So that's another, I would say, financial implication. And again, the way process is defined that once you are given the certificate, you can use the ISI mark or BIS mark on your products, and for that you have to pay a marking fee, which is generally a very nominal marking fee, and that is generally payable in advance. So you kind of predict your volumes for the next 1 year, calculate the fee and pay in advance, and at the end of the year you can submit a statement about the real actual amount of marking fee which you were supposed to pay, and pay the differential, or maybe whatever the differential is. So generally this license is granted for a period of 1 to 2 years, and after that you can go for renewal of license. So the why this process is there, of course we just discussed this, but the very important point here is that based on our past experience, this process takes roughly 4 to 6 months period, because the whole lot of application processing happens, then the physical inspection happens, then testing at the Indian lab happens, then the formalities, documentation, agreements, etc. So one critical aspect which needs to be kept in mind is that suppose a quality control order is announced today, which is applicable from 1st of September 2023. So the importers in India has to take a cognizance of that at least 6 to 7 months in advance, because they will have to reach out to those relevant manufacturers outside India or exporters outside India, convince them, engage somebody, or start the process, and finally get the license well in time. Because eventually what will happen, once they reach to that deadline, 1st of September, the consignments will not be cleared. And another important aspect here is that gone are the days when we were in the COVID era and authorities were giving the extensions time and again. So we have seen multiple extensions during year 2020 and 2021. But now word is more or less, of course I'm not an expert to comment on the prevalence of COVID or not, but as of now, the way we are seeing for the last 1 year, from a commercial perspective, the COVID relaxations are at least over. If COVID is not over or not, that's a different story. But at least the commercial relaxations because of the COVID is over. So that's broadly a I would say 10-step process on the FMCS. So these are some of the examples of the which are the products which are currently on which the BIS control order is already in place. So steel and iron products, automobile accessories, chemical products. Chemical products, were I think first where they started their emphasis on. Electrical motors, food and related products, batteries, then medical equipment, cement, electrical transformers, household electrical goods, even the electrical switches, capacitors, then cylinder, valves, regulators, a lot of such products which have already come into the fold of BIS. And the interesting part is that they're increasing their fold every day. So as Rajat said in the beginning, very recently they have the ministry have said they will bring at least 50 orders in the next few months, which will cover 50 product segments. So they're increasing their fold day by day. Okay, so that was broadly FMCS. So just to sum it up, the process, it's a 4-stage process. Although we define the steps into 10 steps. So it's like filing of application is first process, that preliminary approval and appointment of BIS scientist. Third is the site visit and issue of test report, and fourth is the grant of license. This is how broadly the process is structured. Now, so far as the Indian manufacturers are concerned, the process remains more or less the same. So far as these 4 steps are concerned, the only difference is the Indian manufacturers do not need to appoint an authorized Indian representative, because they are very much available in India. So that is one requirement which is not there. But apart from that, filing of application, visit to the factory, testing of equipment, testing of sampling of product, etc., that happens. Another, I think the differentiating factor is that they don't need to submit any bank guarantee as such, because of course they are very much available in India. So they have been given that relaxation that they don't need to submit a bank guarantee as such. And they have simplified the process to some extent. There is a portal called Manak Online, through which the Indian manufacturers can apply online, file an application. And of course the process is a bit I would say shorter, because of course there is no foreign visit which is involved. There is no appointment of Indian authorized representative which is involved. So in case of Indian manufacturers, the process can happen, if done properly, can be done, within a period of 2 months as well. So that is how, the Indian manufacturers are concerned. So That's the broad, I would say, process which has to be followed by the foreign manufacturers. With this, we are moving on to the next segment, which is the compulsory registration scheme. I would request my colleague Rajat to take us through the compulsory registration scheme.
Thank you so much, Vishal. So while, in this session, we are trying to touch upon various key aspects, we are also planning with Taxmann to do a holistic workshop, involving 4 to 6 hours, in which, we will do a larger detailing of all these facets which we have discussed as step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, so far as FMCS is concerned, and for, other certification and registration processes as well. That being said, we have understood, broadly what FMCS is all about. Let's, now look at another scheme known as compulsory registration scheme. Now, there we spoke about certification, which is a comprehensive audit. I may use the word. It's a longish process which takes anywhere between 4 to 6 months. It is not only testing of the product per se, but testing of the facility per se. Yeah. Quality testing, whether or not happening at your manufacturing setup, whether you have the right, guys in your lab who have the capability and qualification, to test, in the in-house facility, so on and so forth. Now we are talking about CRS. CRS simply is registration of the product per se. So here only the product and product alone is being spoken of. Compulsory registration for manufacture, storage, import, sale, or distribution in India for specified products. Here, every product under the sun is not covered. We are only speaking of specified products. Number 2, what is the purpose? Again, proper testing should be there, and these products which are electronic in nature or which are, relevant in the context of renewable energy, those specified products alone have to be tested in the larger interest of the public health and safety. Now, what are the specified products? For products notified by the MeitY, that is Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India, in relation to electronics and IT goods. Likewise, there is another notification which has been updated from time to time by the MNRE for products notified by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. In short, we say MNRE, products like solar photovoltaic systems, devices and components, and so on. So on this, only registration needs to be done. It's a, relatively a very simplistic process. It's an online process in which you can go to the website www.crcbis.in/BIS. So what you can do is, if any of the products which is falling within the basket, and we will, discuss which are those products in an illustrative way, what you can do is you can create your online credentials. You can, log on, ask for a test report, generation of a test report. Once that comes, a testing slot will be given to you in the lab, prescribed by the BIS. As soon as that permission comes, within 90 days, within 60 days, you have to send your goods for testing in the lab. They will test it. That report will also be uploaded. And once that report has come, the department will take cognizance of all of these, and they will give you a CSR, which is a registration as compared to a certification, which we did discuss in the context of FMCS. Now, what are the nuances? What are the other things we can, have a look at on the next slide? So, as I did say, there's an online application based on self-declaration. There shall be a review of application by the department. You also ask for a testing lab slot by one of the labs prescribed by the BIS. You do get a slot. You send the goods to them, and the report also comes to you. So this license, this registration, which will be granted to you for that particular product, say which is manufactured in India, is for 2 years. If you have a scenario where the like products you are importing from outside the country, and you have to get CRS as per the law, because this is compulsory in nature, what you may do is you may import certain sample products by following the due procedure under customs. That is, these goods are being imported for testing purposes. You may have to furnish the requisite bank guarantees and the undertakings to the custom. You're thereby allowed to import these products, and then you have to create an online account and do this procedure under the CRS framework. These are third-party laboratory tests, which is specified by the BIS. There will be, in some of the cases, the BIS may want to have a larger peek at what this product is all about. So many a times what is happening is an additional inquiry is coming, and the BIS scientists also given the responsibility to go through the product itself in order to understand it better before giving you a CRS. So this is typically is a very simplistic process vis-a-vis what we did discuss in the context of FMCS or a Manik online portal kind of a scheme, where it's the longish process, comprehensive process, where not only your product but so many things around it, including the facility, are being tested by the BIS. And of course, post 2 years, a renewal of this CRS may take place. On the next slide, we do have some of the examples in electronics and IT goods notified by METI. There are products like solar photovoltaic system devices components, by MNRE. There are certificates, low voltage, switch gear and control, etc., etc. So these three typical, are the examples under products which are covered under CRS. And the process, as I did discuss, we have, recapped it again in the next slide. Yeah. So online filing, product testing at certified BIS lab, issue of test reports, apply on BIS portal, once the report is in your hands within 90 days, submission of documents and checklist. And if, an additional inquiry comes, there may be a to and fro in terms of some of the additional submissions with the BIS. Plus, the scientists may also want to have a look at the product per se before giving you a clean check on the CRS front. Yeah. So this was, about CRS. One, FMCS comprehensive process. This one, only a registration of the product per se. Now let's understand, why it is important to understand BIS and how efficiently we can implement it in our business case scenario, and what are the few challenges that some of the businesses and sectors are facing so far as BIS is concerned. So clearly, in the wake of, first of all, in the wake of COVID-19, a lot of extensions have been given. There are n number of products, chemicals, toys, etc., which have been given, one extension after the other. As I did mention that on January 20, we had a press release issued by the Ministry of Commerce. That was, of course, in the context of footwear industry, though. But there, the minister looks very, very certain that, now July 1, 2023 is your, date from where this is applicable on footwear, whether it is leather or non-leather made. Likewise, now the government has made up its mind, and the industry should be ready to implement all the standards which have been, lingering around because of COVID-19, because now the government has taken a stand that there shall be no more extensions given. One. Second, now the custom authorities are mapping the imports with BIS. Previously, we have seen instances in the case of steel and steel products where the order has been in place from December 2020, but it is only recently that the authorities have, got particular assignments and said that where's the BIS certificate. And, even the businesses were taken aback as to why this was not asked previously and now. So, now the custom authorities are more intelligent. They have read these, and it is being mapped in the EDI system also, where BIS is applicable or not, so that it, gives a red signal to them, and they can, gives a red flag, and they ask the, importer to furnish more documentation. So far as the businesses are concerned, who are well aligned, who are aware that BIS standards were there and had to be applied, well, they were well prepared and they are through. So far as businesses which never knew that BIS standard is applicable on my importation on these products in particular, they had a surprise, and now they are, struggling as to how BIS certification can be, obtained by their exporters, or they can look at alternative supply chain in the Indian context. So very, very, grave concern for many of the sectors. Steel and steel products, in some of the cases, chemical sector players as well are caught, unguarded. So, this may definitely cause a disruption of supply chain. So we need to have awareness within importers, and there is a larger awareness which is now being gained by authorities as well. So why on the left-hand side, we have mentioned some of the, quality control orders of steel and steel products. One, They have been in place for a longish period of time, but because the custom was not enforcing them rigorously, many of the players were not aware. So if this sector, impacts you directly or indirectly, please take cognizance of all the standards. In some of the products, there may be 1, 2, 3 standards applicable. And, curiously, interestingly, steel and steel products are the only quality control standards where the language, the product is mapped with the HSN code. So if you know your HSN code, you can go to that standard and easily find out that whether or not some quality control order, is applicable to my products, and you can do the adherence. So far as other, quality control standard orders are concerned, believe us, be it toys, be it shoes, or anything under the sun you speak of, they are not at all linked with the HSN code. So therefore, you have to go through the entire technical treatise in order to understand whether it covers a particular product. For example, PTFE falling under 39 or an FKM falling under 38. So you have to do a detailed dive into the standards on a technical level in order to understand that whether or not my product is covered there. So that's a literature in English, no HSN code map. It's not easy. It's pretty complex job in order to ascertain whether my products are covered there or not. Yeah. So I did say a couple of other points that now how the government has taken a stand, no more extensions. The business must know that these are the applicable standards in my context, whether it's a CRS, whether it's a FMCS, whether I can get the guys who's sitting outside and exporting to me, I can have him under the radar of BIS, or alternatively, if it is going to take 4 to 7 months and I don't want my business to shut down in the meanwhile, I will have to certainly look for alternatives. Yeah. So these are some of the thoughts, on business challenges. One last point, importantly, in the context of steel and steel products, what we have seen is normally, it is the final product which is coming into India, which is subjected to a BIS standard. You have Mr. John in say Canada, who is sending caustic soda to me in India. Now this caustic soda, the final product which is landing onto my hands, which is raw material for me, shall be subjected to a BIS standard more often than not. But in case of steel and steel products, we also saw that not only the product which is landing onto my hands, that is caustic soda, that is under the BIS radar, but the raw material which is going to Mr. John in Canada, using which he's making caustic soda, the guy, who's under him, he should also have a BIS certification. So many a times it can really go complex. So therefore, the need of the hour for businesses is to get on top of this subject, understand the framework, understand the, which quality standard shall be applicable on their facts, on their sector, and do the compliance, because compliance is time taking, it is very cumbersome at times. And if you are not on the right side of the law, then of course you have to bear the consequences. Yeah. Thank you so much. I now hand it over to Vishal to take us through the final segment. Yeah. Post that, we may have certain Q&As from our audience. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So basically, this is the last piece of our today's discussion. We just wanted to highlight some of the recent developments under BIS, just to showcase that how the BIS is increasing its fold, and how more and more goods are being brought into the fold of BIS. The second one is very, very interesting. I will start with the first one though. So recently in August 24, 2022, the hydrogen peroxide has been brought into. They issued an order, and this is a notified product now under the BIS. The second one, as I said, is very interesting. It's only a few weeks back, there was a detailed article in Economic Times as well, wherein they talked about that there has to be some quality control on the consumer reviews, which is published on a particular portal or an app. So look at the intent, or the inroads which BIS wants to make. So for example, if you are talking about any app, let us say you see a lot of consumer reviews on any portal, whether it is Make My Trip, or whether it is Zomato or Uber or anywhere else. So what they're talking about now is that even there has to be a quality control on that as well. So it should not so happen that that anybody can publish any sort of reviews on the website. There has to be a framework under which those reviews has to be guided before publishing onto the website. Of course, the details there are much more details available about this, which we are not going to discuss as such in this session, but the idea is that, that kind of, thought process is there. The third one is, there are, as we said, very recently they said, we are going to very quickly bring 50 quality control orders, which will cover products like aluminum, sports goods, and various other, various others. And, very recently, as Rajat also said in the beginning, on January 9 as well, there was another order to kind of, bring cables, connectors, and some TV receptacles, etc., into the fold of BIS. And, again, the most recent one, the footwear. The footwear, if I correctly recall, was also announced almost a year and a half back, but there were, of course, various extensions which were given to footwear sector because of COVID scenario. But now finally it is applicable from July 1, 2023. So again, the idea to showcase all these, developments is that this is how the government is thinking. When we say footwear, there is no rocket science which is involved in the footwear. There are no, I would say, I mean, it will be wrong to say there are no safety hazards, but in a layman language, it is not an electrical product, which can probably burn or which can probably cause a fire or something. So footwear is not among that category. But of course, if we go into technicalities, there are a lot of safety hazards, there are a lot of quality hazards which can be there in a footwear product as well. So, we have gone through the footwear standards in past for one of our clients. So there are so much of details, for each category of shoes which are given in the BI standard. It is amazed to see, that kind of in-depth detailing has been done in those standards about each test, the strength of material, strength of everything, strength, and test equipments which are prescribed. So, just to showcase, this is the intent of the government. So again, this is a concluding slide where, we just wanted to highlight, some of the key takeaways. So BIS, is applicable on various other things as well, which we have not touched in detail in this particular session, like, hallmarking of jewelry, system certifications. Also, the BIS is applicable on system certification as well. And as we said, the significance of BIS is, of course, it is there to promote Make in India. And this is a non-tariff barrier, of course, to support Make in India. And of course, in case we don't comply with the BIS requirement, of course, it can result into a possible, supply chain disruption. And most importantly, when I said in the beginning about the authorized Indian representative in case of FMCS, as well as in case of, Indian manufacturers, the penal provisions are, quite harsh. So in case, somebody is caught with a non-compliance, the authorities have the, right to penalize the person, and the penalty can go up to the 5 times of the value of the goods imported as well, or goods, manufactured as well. So that is the kind of, penalties they are talking about. Of course, they are coupled with imprisonment also in case of, serious non-compliances. So that is kind of, penalties and, kind of implementation mechanism, or, the ecosystem we are talking about. So, again, we have already discussed this though, but just to reiterate, the Indian government believes that, we are, of course, also a country now that nobody can dump, any quality of goods in our country. There has to be a quality certification. There has to be a process in place to do that, which is very much, visible from the fact that they are not only talking about system certifications, they are also talking about, the BIS framework for the consumer reviews, published on the portals as well. So, we are not only talking about goods, it's about processes, systems, everything. So government mandate is very clear that there has to be a control and quality, environment prevalent in India, whether it's with respect to goods being manufactured in India or goods being manufactured outside. But, those things are very much in focus of government of India. So with this, we would sort of, conclude our session, and we can definitely take up questions now. I can see, there are a few questions in the chat box as well. So, we can take them first one by one, or,
So I think Komal has a list of questions. So let's start with that, and then we may take it.
Sure.
So which he, some of the participants have sent previously.
Sure.
Komal, are you with us?
Okay. In the meanwhile, maybe I will utilize the time and answer a couple of questions on the screen. So there is a question with respect to, I will just read it out, Rajat, that whether the QCO issued by DPIIT states providing that nothing in this order shall apply to goods or articles meant for export. So does this mean an EOU does not need BIS for importing? So sir, just to clarify, if I may take the liberty to answer this question. just to clarify that, BIS is applicable on the goods being manufactured in India and used in India. So if there are certain goods which are manufactured in India and being exported outside India, the BIS standards are not applicable as such on that. Because, of course, the BIS standards of that, or the quality standards of the country where they are being eventually consumed, they will be applicable. And of course, whatever those standards are, the manufacturer sitting here in India will have to take care of that. But as such, goods which are being manufactured and straight away, exported out of country, the BIS regulations are not applicable.
So, relevant bank guarantees, etc., shall have to be furnished, though, so your relevant details, etc., certain compliances are there which will have to be met. So, there's another question, Vishalji, if you want to take that up. What is the concept of AIR with reference to FMCS? And whether the same professional, one person can, represent 10 different companies as well. Vishal, are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, please. Yes, please. So, what is the concept of AIR and whether the same gentleman can represent as AIR to say 2 different groups or 10 different groups or 10 different companies? So, this is one of the questions posed by one of the participants.
Sure. So, am I audible?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, as we explained, the concept of AIR is, has been brought in because, in case of foreign manufacturers only, because, these are the companies who are foreign nationals, who are not available physically in India, and they are not sort of, covered by the Indian laws and regulations in general. So that is where, this has been emphasized that, a person who is a resident of India should become an authorized Indian representative of that manufacturer who is coming and making that application, so that he can be held responsible for the process first, and then of course in case of any eventuality where there is a non-compliance, he can be held responsible. So this person, signs the agreement also, which is signed with BIS authorities on behalf of manufacturer. To answer another question, whether the same person can become AIR for multiple companies, the answer is no. I mean, one person can represent, only one company. So that flexibility is not there. Rajat, maybe, please add if there is a recent development on
so perfect. So one company or one group. So if there's a group, comprising of a number of companies with common shareholding and all, you may be the AIR. Otherwise, it cannot happen that I am the AIR for Adani, for Reliance, for Tata's, it cannot happen that way, because the reason, of course, is that Vishalji did say, you cannot have a gentleman, who's taking these guarantees on personal and financial level for everybody, under the sun. So to that extent, the law provides that either for one company or for one group, you can be an AIR. And AIR also need not be a, employee of a related party in India. So even an advisor, even a professional may put his neck out and say that, I am happy to be the AIR, of course, subject to all the responsibility, roles and responsibility that he has vis-a-vis BIS, which of course Vishalji did speak about, back-to-back guarantees being given by the company, so on and so forth, in order to safeguard the interest of this particular gentleman who has chosen to become the AIR for this particular group or this particular person.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there is
apart from this, there's another question, Vishalji. How do we get to know whether BIS is applicable and which scheme to our sector or goods, as we do not have internal capability?
So for that, of course, one has to understand, the BIS regulations and, various schemes and the products covered under various schemes. So if a company believes that they do not have internal capability, they can always, hire advisors to, do a detailed analysis that how, which products are covered. Because, one very important aspect which Rajat also touched upon, that the BIS standards and the name of the products are not linked to HSN codes, except in, one product category. So by looking at the name of the BIS standard and, the apparent definition of the product which is defined in a BIS regulation or a control order, you sometimes may not be able to very, very clearly determine whether your product is covered under that category or not. So one has to do a bit of detailed deep diving to to determine whether the product is covered or not. And the challenge here is that as of now there is no mechanism in place which kind of protects you against your misinterpretation. So if you misinterpret it and eventually your consignment lands at custom port and the custom port authority interpretation is different, then of course you are in trouble. So it is always better to kind of, interpret, I would say, well in advance, and, do an analysis well in advance, either internally or with the help of advisors.
Yes, please. One more question, which has come that, is there any procedure to change the quality control standard itself, given that there are new technologies evolving, etc., and better machines are coming on which,
Sure.
certain chemicals are made, and therefore some of the wastage which was envisaged earlier, that is becoming redundant. So given that, how complex or easy it is to a request for changing of the quality standard per se.
Sure. So, again, this is a policy level, change which one has to request for. So the answer is both yes and no. Why no? Because it is not going to be as easy as possible. So of course, there is a ministry, which is sitting behind it. There is a department which is sitting behind all these standards. So one makes a right representation, the way we make for any other change, policy level in, changes with the government, we can always make a right representation to the, relevant, I would say, arm of the Ministry of Commerce. And if they believe that you as industry or a significant player of the industry, your sort of request has merits, they can always consider it. But mind it, it will be a long drawn process. It will not happen immediately, because the formulation of BI standards have taken various years. So that can always be entertained, but it will take some time. But that kind of policy level representation or advocacy can always be done.
So there's one more question, given that we do have few more minutes. So one question reads by Nankumarji: item HSN listed in BIS but not available in India. Since it is a high quality product not easily available in India, is there any provision to waive from BIS? So I will take that, Vishalji, with your permission.
Sure.
So
sure.
Given that if your product is, say, covered under that FMCS scheme, if the quality standard does prescribe that this particular product, must fall within the ambit of FMCS, and therefore you must obtain a certificate. You must obtain that certificate, whether or not those goods are available in India. The idea is that, is there any environmental harm? Is there anything wrong that could go in terms of the quality, which may hurt the consumers at large? So while your concern is very legitimate, while you may knock the doors of BIS authorities and the parent ministry, which may have, come up with the idea of this quality standard, I'm afraid, it will be very difficult to persuade upon them that such relaxation should be made. In fact, we also have done that in the past, but we have barely seen success in such matters. Yeah. So once, your product falls within the four walls of a particular QCO, and the mandate is that, it is compulsory, you have to follow it. I'm afraid you have to follow it, while, you may try your hands and see if, some kind of relaxation could come your way. Yeah.
So there is one more very interesting question, Rajat. We may attempt to answer it. Maybe we need your views on that. So the question is that if a BIS material is imported from outside the country and it is imported by EOU. So EOU is of course doing 100% exports out of the country. So will BIS be applicable on import of raw material for such products? Because everything which is being manufactured is going out of going out of country only.
So I think in the context of SCZ or EOU, we had taken this question many a times to BIS authorities. While no concrete policy level statement I have seen from them, or maybe if it has come, may have escaped my assessment. But bottom line is that even if they do allow that, there will be certain certain conditions, there will be certain undertakings, etc., that we will have to give. Somebody very rightly wrote that, in the order QCO, it is very categorically written that, this shall not be applicable if the goods are to be exported out of the country. Yeah. Right. So in that context, there are certain formalities, bank guarantees, indemnities, we have requested them time and again. And I myself is, looking for a concrete answer there. Maybe we'll have to, revisit what these guys are thinking these days. But in writing, I have not seen anything, to that effect, which says that, you are importing, manufacturing, and it is 100% going out. You will be outside the purview. Maybe we'll have to, we will have to relook at that question once more. And the gentleman would have our email ID and mobile number. You can get in touch with us. Kindly allow me a day. we will once again, pose this before the authorities and see what is their, new approach to that. Because in the past, we have been getting, have not been getting an affirmative answer, to that regard.
Right.
Any other question? Maybe a last one we may take.
So the last question is, whether the these will be applicable, standards will be applicable for import of products in case of somebody is importing it for the personal consumption.
So a BIS standard is applicable. It is only for your betterment that, India wants you to import high quality products. So if your product is covered, they are not saying that it has to be used for further processing, further manufacturing, so on and so forth. So one would imagine that even if these goods are meant for personal consumption, the BIS law should be equally applicable.
Because that's the very purpose of BIS regulations, right?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I think with this, I think we are also done with the time as well. So should we conclude the session? I mean, of course, we may not have answered, some of the questions, but, we request to reach out to us through email or message. We can always answer, the additional questions.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.